Hello and welcome to Books and Banter podcast. My name is Marcia Spence and I'm here with my wonderful guest, Richard Anderson, who is the author of Consequences, King David, a legend, a myth, or just a man. Richard, who are
Oh,
you?
yeah. Who am I? That is a fully loaded question,
It
but
is.
I'm going to say that I am just a man. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
I am for work. My substantive post is as a college lecturer. I lecture in health and social care. I am a suicide prevention first aider. I am a minister, church minister. I'm
Mm-hmm.
also the founder of Barbershop Chats, which is an online forum for men to be able to kind of have a safe space to just talk about their feelings. And we look at a number of things like suicide prevention. We look at mental health issues. We look at pornography addiction, which is something that, you know,
Mm,
it's something that's dangerous, but it just goes under the radar because of the nature of pornography addiction. Uh,
mm.
what else do I do? Yeah, I try my best to put it that way. One of my issues, and I've said this before, that it's kind of controversial, but I don't think a lot of the church involve themselves in things that we should do. So instead of kind of shouting from the sidelines what's wrong, I try and roll my sleeves up and get involved and try and reach out to people to try and help people because people are in need. But yeah,
Wow.
apart from that, I'm a husband, a father, an uncle, a brother. I'm just got lots of different hats. Mm.
Oh, thank you so much, Richard. Wow, what a resume.
Mm.
And what I picked up from there was, and piqued my interest, was the barbershop chats.
Mm.
You're doing some specific work with
Mm.
men that
Mm.
off that I think that often those conversations don't happen.
Mm.
So one of the topics was the suicide prevention.
Mm.
And why in particular are you doing that work with men?
Well, men, if you look at the statistics, which I like to base my seminars, because I go out and I'll speak to community groups, I'll speak to churches, specifically churches, because the church hasn't got a very good track record when it comes to people that have taken their lives. And one of my questions is, why is it that somebody may think to themselves that the best course of action when all else fails is to take your own life? And there are
Mm,
people who are outside of the church doing this, and there are people who are inside of the church doing this. Uh,
mm,
Men are 3 times more likely to take their own lives statistically, and that
wow.
has been since we started recording statistics on suicide. That has been consistent. The only thing that changes is probably the age ranges, because a few years ago it would have been kind of like 16 to 18 to 20-year-olds. Uh,
Mm,
then it's kind of changed to men who are in their 40s, between the ages of, say, like 43, 44 up until 49. So, yeah, men are 3 times more likely to take their own lives. But my involvement comes through being involved in 3 separate incidences where people have taken their lives. One of who was somebody that I went to school with,
mm,
junior school, and grew up in the same area, and
yeah.
moved around, knocked heads with in Handsworth, where I was born and grew up. So
Okay.
yeah, it's something that I suppose one of the issues for me is that I've stopped. Most people will say, "Oh, I didn't see that coming, and there were no signs." However, if you are trained, you do know the signs.
Yeah.
But I've kind of stopped saying to people, well, there were signs, you just didn't see them because it's counterproductive and people feel guilty.
Mm. Wow, Richard. Wow. That is, remarkable, really, and that there are so many men, of a middle age
Mm,
actually, actually either contemplating suicide or actually completing suicide.
mm,
So how successful would you say the work is, and what is the take up of the work that you do?
mm,
What's the take up of the services? Because I know that suicide also has touched my life a
mm,
few times, and it's a topic that I want to tell everyone about, how we can raise awareness,
mm,
how we
mm,
can acknowledge and be honest
mm,
about that this happens
mm,
in our community, you
mm,
know, but people shy away. And even after somebody's life has been lost
mm,
because of suicide, people still don't
mm,
talk
mm,
about it. They
mm,
just think it's a one-off,
mm,
so we don't need to do anything. And that frustrates me.
mm.
How is it working for you doing the actual work that you do?
I think that I've been able to crack a very hard nut, and that very hard nut is the church. As I've said
Fantastic.
before, there's a massive stigma attached to people taking their own lives, especially within the Black community. And because that stigma has been there, especially around churches, uh,
Mm-hmm.
being able to go in and speak to, say, like our mother church in London, Faith Chapel, being able to go to, speak to people in Nottingham, speak to people in Worksop, or just all over the country, people inviting me to come down, sometimes multiple times. It has been very productive, and people
Fantastic.
are reaching out and trying to find out more about it. My
Fantastic.
personal feeling is that anybody who's forward facing, so if you're a bus conductor, if you're a train,
Mm-hmm.
if you're a bank teller, everybody should be trained,
Everybody.
because we are losing between 5,000 and 6,000 people per year to suicide. And it's just a terrible, terrible waste.
It really is. It really is. So Richard, how how do you support someone who is contemplating suicide? What's I mean, I know this is not a course, this is not one of your talks, but
Mm,
you have conversations with men in the barbershop, um, conversations that you
mm,
have.
mm.
So how would you support someone who was struggling with their mental health and maybe was contemplating suicide?
That's the number one issue around mental health for somebody who's contemplating taking their own lives is clinical depression, clinical depression. Um, People who are trained in suicide prevention are trained to engage that person. So there are certain things that we don't do. If you notice, I haven't used the word or used the phrase committing suicide. When you commit,
Mm,
you're committing a crime.
yes,
So the one thing I don't use, and I have been guilty of slipping back into that because it's ingrained, isn't it? So
yeah.
I don't use the phrase committing suicide. We use the phrase somebody's contemplating taking their own lives. That's the first thing. So we try and remove the stigma from
Yeah.
action of suicide.
Yes.
What people do is that they're scared, so they think to themselves, if I mention the word suicide, it may drive the person to go and do it. Well,
Mm,
that's just not true. So
no.
if you do engage somebody, they're more likely to breathe a sigh of relief and say, well, actually, somebody is prepared to talk to me about this. When you're engaging somebody, or when I'm engaging somebody, I don't people generally say this, you're not contemplating doing something stupid, are you? Well, straight away,
Mm,
throw up a wall in front of the person. I think, right, obviously the way that I feel is perceived as stupid to an individual. So that throws that wall up and then they disengage. But what you need to be able to do is to be clear about what you're asking. Have you thought of taking your own life? And then if that person has said, if the person said yes, the first thing I'm looking at is, okay, so talk to me about that. What does that look like? How are you contemplating that? What is it that, how are you going to take your own life? The person says rope, or they say pills or something like that, then the next thing that I would be doing is to try and remove that threat from the person. That's the first thing. If I don't know the person intimately to walk into their house, then I would be saying, well, let me speak to your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, your uncle, your aunt, and engage that person to say, right, can you go and, this is the conversation. This is the conversation I'm having with this person, and try and get them involved to try and remove the person or signpost them to somebody else. So, engaging the person, being quite clear about what you're saying, removing the threat, and then explaining to the person that, if you did this, there are going to be people who are going to be very, very upset about it, and they're going to be, devastated, because usually if people are in a state of clinical depression or they're contemplating taking their own lives, they're thinking, well, nobody's going to miss me, and if I do this, the world will be a better place. Well, actually, they need to be told the truth. The truth is that no, the world won't be a better place, and you'll be leaving people behind who'll be, number one, they'll be upset that you've done it. Number two, they'll feel guilty about it. Number three, they'll feel helpless. And the other side to it is that sometimes you can have suicide clusters. So if you have, say, siblings, twins, you got siblings who, are close, then it's quite possible, friends, it's quite possible that they may be contemplating doing this as well. So, there's a lot behind it. But as I said, there's a massive stigma attached to it. We don't really talk about it, and we need to. It needs to be a conversation out in the open, and people need to feel, what, this is not the way that I'm feeling. Is people need to accept the way that people are feeling about it, and be able to engage them and discuss this, and take it out of the mystique and and the darkness behind it.
Thank you so much, Richard. I mean, I just think that it was very important for me to give you the space to share that.
Thank you.
Because it is vitally important, and it's like I can see it's part of your mission, and absolutely. I don't think I could have a conversation with you without touching on that subject. Absolutely. But then there are other aspects that you talk about, which I believe, like you talk about the sex addiction and things like that with the men. What I think this is a good link into your new book, Consequences, King David, because this is about from what I know. Obviously, we've worked on it together for I don't know how long it's been. Was it like over 2 years?
Yeah, I think I started working on. I started on it before the pandemic, because it was a series of adult Christian education. So I started with one lesson, and as I studied more and more, I started to kind of pull these facts out about David, and it just went into, say, I think it was about, in the end, it was like 20 lessons, and it just deeper and deeper and into it. So I wrote the book based on the notes that I had written for my lessons. I suppose the other thing was that I kept kind of feeling a pull to write the book, and I kept putting it off, and then we went into pandemic, and it's like God said, you got no excuse now. So I had to, just start writing, and that's what I did. Just started writing
and get it done. And I mean, it's getting some great reviews. People are enjoying. So I know, Richard, it's been quite a what's the word? Just a bit of overcoming. There's been a journey, hasn't there, from it being like adult Sunday school Christian education lessons and wondering, can this make a good book? So I know that you've been through different experiences, imposter syndrome, all of that, which most new authors do anyway. In fact, not even new authors, because I've got a book sitting on my table right here that should be coming out soon, and I'm getting anxious. So it's part of the natural journey, no matter how many books you do. So some great reviews about your style of writing, the humor, the depth of the knowledge in terms of going, into Jewish, some of the Jewish text, and then telling that in-depth, detailed story of all these names, of all these characters. I can't even say them. There's a whole list. So, Richard, what is the key theme in your book?
The key theme has to be based on the fact that most people hear about King David, and they hear King David was, a boy who slew Goliath. He was a man after God's own heart. He was this, he was that, he was he was of the line of that Jesus would come through. But you hear all these fantastic things, and what hit me about him was that actually, when we look at the story of David and Bathsheba, it's a shock, because not many people preach about it, not many people teach about it, that David was just a man, just like any one of us. And I didn't. There's a part in the book where I say that I didn't get into, anywhere near the amount of trouble that David got into, so I feel better about myself.
So, Richard, so I'm saying, you're saying he was just a man. What makes you say that? How did he conduct himself as just a man?
Well, I mean, he messed up. he not many, as I said, not many people know this, but David, the story of David and Bathsheba is that David just saw a woman and decided that he wanted her. Okay. And it didn't matter that this was another man, and not even another man. It was one of his friends, one of his colleagues, one of his brothers in arms. It was his wife, and David, took the woman. The word says that, David sent his servants and they took her, and it says that he lay with her. Now, again, I don't think I don't shy away from controversy, but my question in the book is that if you are a woman, you're on your own, the king, who is the ultimate law in that time, and we're talking about a patriarchal system, sends servants and guards to come and take this woman out of her house. Is she able to say no? The answer is no. And it says that he lay with her. Now, my question around that is, what type of choice did she have to sleep with David? And if that is the question, then what are we talking about here?
Was it, because really, could she actually be could it have been completely consensual? Well, maybe not, because she'd probably feel that she just has to do it, because what other choice did she have? And
what do we call that?
Call that, exactly.
Okay.
All right. Exactly. Okay. And so, Richard, this is what makes your book so enlightening and controversial, in the sense that you are highlighting the things that maybe people may kind of just brush past in the scriptures and in the stories.
Absolutely.
So there are other so whilst we, as you said, get David, David wrote the Psalms, but did we understand why, why some of the Psalms, why he wrote them? And what I understand from this book gives the backdrop to why. Yeah, very interesting. There's another side to David as well that
Mm.
you highlight, in just that he seems, well, I suppose the murderous side
Well,
as
I was going
well.
to say that we talked about what he did with Bathsheba, but then the the kind of moving on from that is after she gets pregnant is what he does to try and hide, the fact that he got her pregnant. And it turns out that what he was trying to do was to get Uriah, who was her husband, to go and sleep with her so that he could give, in Jamaicans, in our
Jackets,
give him my jacket.
jackets.
And because the two of the times that he
Yeah.
tried to do that, it didn't work.
Mm.
They working against the clock now, because any minute now her servants are going to start seeing that she's starting to have morning sickness, and she's getting thick around the waist. What does he do? David, the king of Israel, the man that's after God's own heart, the one who slew Goliath and all the rest of it, yada yada yada, he sends a letter with Uriah back to the front line to Joab, who incidentally is David's nephew, his mom, David's sister, to say, right, put this guy in the hottest part of the battle and then run away and leave him so that he is killed by the Amorites. Now, David has committed cold-blooded, premeditated murder.
Yeah.
Not only that, it's now a conspiracy because Joab is involved and David's involved. So, it's just like any minister or any high,
leader.
Yeah, any leader who is known, when they slip up, it's kind of okay. Everybody's so shocked and everybody's so stunned, and this person, did wrong, or that took some money, or they slept with a woman, or they did this or did that, and people are kind of so shocked, and it's kind of like, oh, how could this have happened? Well,
He's a man.
the point is that you're just dealing with a man. You're dealing with
He's a
flesh and
man.
blood, and I'm saying, well, he's just a man. It's not an excuse. He's not saying yes, he should have done it, but the point is, if you're following the man and not following Christ, the wrong road, because the arm of flesh will always fail you. So that's the story is about David just being a man, as we all are just men.
So Richard, in just listening to you there and just thinking about the book itself and how the book will benefit readers, do you think that then what this could do for men in particular is help them to understand that, because I'm imagining, that some men might feel, well, I'm not worthy, like I'm not worthy. I'm not like, I'm not worthy as a Christian, or I'm not good enough because I have these thoughts, or I have these behaviors. And but I believe that with this book, especially such a legend as David is, but breaking it down to also, identify, well, David was a man and he had similar, he had the same kind of fleshly nature as any other human being would have. And I'm just wondering if part of this, the purpose of the book is to help, help people, men and women, but men in particular, to understand that they are human.
Absolutely.
And so human, okay, so I'm not going to say it for you. Yeah.
The point is that, the scripture says that that the saints overcome by the blood of the Lamb and also by the testimony of the saints. Yes. And I think we have kind of forgotten that old tradition of testimonies. And when I'm talking about testimonies, I don't mean the fixed up, kind of, I'm so godly type, testimonies. When me and my sister is my pastor, and we always joke when we're in the pulpit that we're the only ones that talk our business. I will go
Really,
and I will say,
really.
yeah, because I will say, right, this is what I have done in the past. This is how I've slipped up. This is how I've messed up, but God has, restored me. God has helped me.
Amen.
And
Amen.
people sit there and they think, oh, you're standing there in your suit, in your Sunday best with your nice shoes on,
Yeah.
and you look so fantastic. But I don't look like what I've been through.
Amen.
People need to hear so that they recognize, well, actually, he can make it with some of the things that he's done, then I can make it
Absolutely.
as well.
Yes,
While we're
Richard.
there kind of painting this picture that was so godly and so fantastic and so
Yeah.
perfect, people will think, you know what, this is unreachable, this is
Unreachable.
unattainable.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right. And it's funny, we've not really had this conversation in the
No,
journey.
no.
But I totally agree with you
Mm, mm,
that if I work with authors who are writing their life story or a memoir or, and but they're just, and particularly Christian writers,
mm.
they're just gliding over things and using kind of thee, thou language,
The
and
reason, though, Marcia,
go on.
you see, there's when we talk about systems, we need to
Yeah.
we need to we need to think about the system that we're working in. Now, if you are a minister, yeah, and
Mm,
people look up to you, don't they? They
yes.
don't expect you to have, thoughts, feelings, struggles. They don't
Mm,
expect any of that. Now, what happens is when they fall, as I said previously, people think, oh, look at how the man did this, look at how the man did that, blah, 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 blah.
but they don't say the
Actually,
man. Remember, they don't say
right.
the man, the
But what,
minister.
right. It's a minister, it's not a man. So if
Mm,
you're a minister and you're writing your memoirs, yeah, then and you say, well, actually, this is one of the situations that I got into, then
yeah.
everybody starts to point the finger and the
Mm,
judge, and not just the
mm,
people who are in
mm,
church, the people outside of church point.
mm, mm,
Oh, look at you!
mm.
Look what you've done! Look at this!
But
Oh, they're no
Richard,
good,
yeah,
and so you will get that when we realize that church is a hospital. So there are some people who are critical. There are some
right?
people who are on the mend. There are some people who have relapsed. Yeah.
Yeah,
Then we recognize what
yeah,
the central
yeah,
gospel message is that we're all messed up, and
yeah.
the only one that was perfect was Christ, and he's the one that we have to turn to,
Mm,
try and
mm,
make us
mm,
better.
mm, mm, mm.
It's going to be a journey. It will
But
take
Rich,
time.
but Richard, going back to the point about giving a genuine, authentic testimony,
Mm,
for me, and this is
mm,
what I say to authors or to people, because
mm,
I'm a very open person as well,
mm,
is that how can we demonstrate what
mm,
God has done
mm,
and give God the glory if
mm,
we don't tell
mm,
people
mm,
truly?
mm,
We're not doing it ourselves.
mm,
And
mm,
so it's giving, and so the way that I break it down is that, your testimony or your book that you're writing, it is a testimony,
mm,
and it's giving God the glory, and it's showing what God has done in your life and
mm,
what he can do for others. And
mm,
that is the purpose. And I agree with you, Richard, that, you know, testimonies are vital. I
mm,
think that within systems, within, say, church systems and community systems, is that in this modern day, there's this kind of just glossy, glamorous look.
mm,
And we're not always, people are afraid to be open and honest about their lives. In terms of the ministers, actually, I have found that they are sharing some things that you'd never have thought.
mm,
I think it might be more so people who are maybe not in the senior ministry
mm,
that are a
mm,
bit afraid of
mm, mm,
telling their full
mm.
story. We need to
Mm.
break that. We need to break that as well in
It's,
order to,
it's a mask. It's your public mask, and then you have your private mask.
yeah,
You'll find that ministers will mix with other ministers because they're able to let their hair
be
down and
themselves.
be themselves. And one of the things that I say to any man that I speak to is, number one, what you talk to me about is 100% confidential. And then I say to them, the caveat to that is that if you tell me that you are going to hurt somebody or you're going to hurt yourself, then that's into safeguarding, which means that I do have to say something. But if you're telling me things about yourself, then you need to know that it's not going anywhere. Men need to feel that they are in a safe space to be able to talk about their feelings and not feel as though they're being condemned.
Judged.
What I don't want is for anybody to think that I'm not holding anybody accountable, because, you know, you can't be a David without a Jonathan, which is one of the things that I say in the book. Jonathan was somebody who would challenge David and say, look, you know, X, Y, and Z, and would help him and help to train him and help to kind of show the way. So if you are a David, you're not, you know, that inner David is not going to come out of you until you find somebody who will hold you accountable and will be there for you so that you can let your hair down. I mean, I've got somebody that I talk to. So, you know, I'll phone him up and I'll say, you know, he's not Richard as well. Which means king and strong leader, by the way.
Wow.
Anyway, I'll rant and rave and say, I'm so unhappy about this and blah, blah, blah. And he'll go, okay. And then he'll go, right, now what? When he says, now what? And now have to gather myself together, pick myself up, dust myself off and go, okay, well, this is the plan for me to deal with this situation going forward. And every man needs that. What you do find with men is when they get together, you get this macho, bravado. This bravado thing, this nonsense about, you know, who's the alpha and who's the, well, you know, my alpha is Jesus. My alpha male is Jesus. You know, you can't scare me. You can't kind of best me. You can't, you know, I'm not looking at you. I'm looking at Christ. So follow me while I follow Christ.
Yeah. Richard, wow. We've been talking for quite a long time. It's gone really quickly. I think that we need to talk again. So we need to have another interview at some point. It has been so, even though I've worked with you for, I say, these couple of years on the book and kind of know the book inside out, I've also gotten an insight into you, your interests, the purpose and meaning behind the book. Right at the end, you spoke about you have a go-to person. You have Richard that you go to. Do you think, I mean, I'm just thinking that I think every man needs to have that place to go, needs to have that place to go. It is vitally important for any human. You need that safe place to go where you can be yourself, where you can vent, you can work out issues, and then come out the other end. So, Richard, where do you worship? Where are you a minister? What is your church?
It's called Ark for Dominion Apostolic Ministries. It's on Wilton Road in Handsworth.
Okay. Birmingham.
In Birmingham, Handsworth, Birmingham. And we have our services there at 2:30. 1:30. So what I usually teach from probably about 1:45. Teach for probably about an hour. Now we have a very interactive Sunday school, so I do encourage people to ask questions and what have you. We get in debates and what have you, but that's what makes it good, because people kind of talk and what have you. And then, you know, my sister preaches, and she is being invited all over the world, Bahamas, America, all over America.
Wow.
Going to be going to France in November. She's been invited to preach there. We were in Milton Keynes last week. She was preaching again. And what's your sister's name?
Pastor
Karen Fife.
Okay. I thought so. And just remind us of the title of your book?
It's called Consequences, King David.
Yeah, I've got my copy.
Yeah, and it's about it's basically it's saying to people that, look, you know, if you're a Christian, there are consequences to our actions, because I think that a lot of people think, oh, if I can ask God for forgiveness, there won't be a ripple effect for what I've done, but there will be. What people need to understand.
Yeah. And where can we buy the book?
You can buy it from Amazon. You can get it from Waterstones. And as I said, if you know me personally, well, if people get in contact with you, then they can get a signed copy. So
fine,
if they just forward their addresses, I will sign their copy.
So if you'd like to email info@marciampublishing.com, we'll pass on the details to Richard. I think we may need to set up some sort of maybe an extra link for your signed copies. And Richard Anderson, I'm going to tell you off now. I'm going to tell him off. I'm his publisher. I can. Look, this is my copy. I don't have a signed copy. Yes. Right? So
I will rectify that as soon as I can.
And guess what as well? I've even bought one off Amazon as well. So I've got a print copy from our printers, and I've bought one off Amazon, and I've bought the Kindle, I think. So Richard Anderson, come on. We've got to make some arrangement. I need this copy signed.
Absolutely, no problem.
And the one I think this is the one I bought off Amazon actually.
Okay.
So yeah, it looks great. So how much is the book? It's $12.99.
$12.99.
It's wonderful. It's a nice, it's an easy read. It's easy to understand. You get to understand. You don't have to be a huge Bible scholar to read and understand this book. I have to tell you, my testimony for this book is this, that I was been working on this book with Richard, and I went to a prayer meeting, and in the prayer meeting, I was able to explain, I can't remember what the thing was now, but I was able to explain David and his condition and the story around his brothers and Bathsheba and everything. And although I'd kind of known about David before, this book equipped me with the knowledge. So, so be proud of that, Richard. I need to write you a review, I think. Yeah.
I mean, what has been a humbling experience for me is that people have written reviews, and the reviews have said, and it's a theme. I mean, two of the reviews that I put up on my Facebook page, both of them said that it was an easy read. So that's exactly what I want. It's humorous. It's an easy read. It does give you information on the Midrash and kind of David's background, and why he was treated the way that he was, because there was a doubt around whether Jesse was his father.
Oh, there you are then. So he's left you on a cliffhanger.
There you go.
Buy the book. It's brilliant. Richard, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have. Yes. And we'll arrange some more. All right.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. 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 Right.